Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today for this live stream event. My name is Albena, and I'm the Program Manager of the Microsoft Reactor San Francisco. I will be sharing session resources with you in the chat, but before we begin, I would like to quickly review two items with you, our Code of Conduct and event guidelines. First, take a moment to review our Code of Conduct. Microsoft Reactor seeks to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We do encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. And secondly, our event guidelines. This session is being recorded and will be available on demand through the Microsoft Reactor YouTube in about 24 to 48 hours. I'll be sharing the link in the chat for our YouTube channel. And if you have not been on a live stream before with YouTube, please take a moment and create an account on YouTube, so then you can ask questions. Which brings us to today's session with the Microsoft Security Insight Show. Let's bring in our speakers. Hello, Eric.
Hi, thanks, Albena.
Hi, I'm bringing up Brodie right now, and Edward and Andrea. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Lovely Wednesday, just lovely. How's everyone doing?
It's cold here in Atlanta, and cold being relative. I know you up there in the great frozen north, but we're being in the 20s tonight.
Ooh,
yeah, 24.
Sweater
around.
weather.
Sweater weather. Yeah, whatever. No, pretty good. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce someone on the show who's been a guest as well as a friend. She was on the last show that we have, and now she's one of our official co-hosts on a permanent basis. Andrea Fisher, credentials and experience goes without saying. She has tremendous amount of and breadth of skill set, connections, industry experience, insights, and she graciously accepted to become one of our permanent co-hosts. Franklin Grimberg, co-creator, friend of mine, we created the show together, has decided that he is going to support the show from the backside, all the editing and everything, but he's taking on new endeavors. He's by no means has left the show. He's just going to go do some other stuff and assist as needed. But what you see is what you get, and what you get is pretty good. Rod is out doing whatever Rod Trent does, saving the world one query at a time. So he's actually traveling for business. I don't think
Oh, he's there on YouTube. Evening from Orlando. He's in Orlando.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Speak
Thanks
of the
for showing
devil.
up, Rod. We appreciate it.
So without that, Andrea, I'd like for you to do an introduction of yourself to all the listeners and supporters who are going to be seeing you here on a permanent basis.
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. I don't know who here, Edward was talking about my experience, which also means I'm old, which is why I have a lot of experience. So if anyone here is old enough to remember Bewitched, I'm like the new Darren. I will never be as good as the old Darren Frank, but I am here to do my best to fill his shoes. So thanks for having me. I have been at Microsoft almost 11 years now in a couple of different roles, but mostly covering security. And I've been in IT more than half my life. I am sit in Tampa, Florida. So I worked at all the big companies in Tampa. My first IT job was Outback Steakhouse, which I'm sure most of you have heard of.
Cool.
But it has been a long and glorious career. And I thank Brodie and Ed and Rod for letting me have this opportunity.
Yay!
It's great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, I think this is going to be the start of a second wave of innovation in the show, some cool ideas, and just some different perspectives to come on. Plus, I don't have to keep pretending I know what I'm talking about with MDE. We now have a Microsoft Defender for Endpoint expert because I'm making stuff up, right? Sure it does, whatever you say. With that, we're going to go ahead and get started. As Reactor is a very visual show that we do once a month. We have a returning guest. Seems like he's here every week now, but we know it's not. He's always welcome, and he and I are in the best way. He and I are peers of a sort, but he works and covers a different security product as well. I won't say industry because anybody can use the product. Mr. Eric Snyder. He is he was a Risk IQ GBB. I don't know what the new title is these days. So with that being said, Mr. Snyder, good to see you again, brother. How are you doing?
Great, Edward. Thanks for having me on again. Always wonderful to be on this. And it's neat to see the evolution of the podcast and now the Reactor show it's really awesome.
Yeah. We're trying to give the people what they want. Well, we want to be a source of good information, good topics, challenging questions, and it's going to allow us to do some better stuff in 2023 and add some new flair to the podcast and the show. Can you really call it a podcast anymore? This is a show. It's a show now.
It's a show that can be a podcast if you choose to listen to it that way. Yeah, it's fair. I like show. That's good.
Right, show.
Maybe that's our new rebrand for 2023. The Microsoft Defender podcast show. Yeah.
That doesn't flow. Oh my God, we need a focus group.
We'll work on it.
We gotta get a focus group.
Working title.
So, Andrea, before we hand the floor over to Mr. Snyder to do his awesome presentation, what you do interesting this week? Anything cool?
Oh, this week I actually started the Senior Technical Leadership Program here at Microsoft, which is a super cool program. A lot of technical people kind of get stuck without a whole lot of career advancement if you don't want to become a manager or that kind of thing. So Microsoft created this particular program so that we all get to network with people from around the world. I was in meetings today with people from Sweden, from Colombia, from Germany, to talk about, our various challenges, to talk about how to be a servant leader with things like empathy and the growth mindset. So that's been what I've been busy this week. What about y'all?
Well, I'll go next and hand it over to Brodie. About 3 or 4 shows ago, maybe 3, we were talking, it had to be 4, because Andrea, you had me run a script because you wanted to see whether MDI would alert on a couple of things, and my lab was garbage because I forgot to update the sensor. The docs have now added a footnote of sort on how to replace the sensor from using PCAP to win PCAP. I believe that's what it is. It's in a doc, and it was instructing you to uninstall the old PCAP driver and then install the new one. Well, you don't have to do that now. What you can do is stop the sensor and install the new one on top of it and restart it, and you're all good.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I tried it and it works, right? So luckily I had a copy of the old sensor stored somewhere, put it back on, and then followed the instructions, because I updated it, but then I did, and I'm like, oh, it does work, right? And supposedly, I talked to the MDI program engineering team. They say that you no longer have to wait the 30 days for the heuristics or the intelligence to rebuild out by keeping the sensor in place and just putting the overlay on top of it. So that makes sense, right? To be able
Is
to
that
do
documented? Does that show when we on MS Docs or learn?
They wouldn't put it in the docs. I talked to them. I said, they're like, oh, no, it's supposed to do that. It's going to maintain it. So the way he explained it was that the sensor is, it's multi-category. There are different pieces in it, and the driver or the capture mechanism is the only thing you're really upgrading, right? So, but if you take the whole sensor off, you got rid of everything. But if you leave it on, you have to stop the service, install it, put it back, and sure enough, right? I guess it goes without having the burden of proof, because I can't get access to wherever that database is. Some people say it's up in Azure, and some people say if you know where to look for it on the machine, it's there. I've yet to find it, and I don't want to break anything. So that's all I did cool this week, and working on this little spreadsheet thingy maybe. Awesome. And I killed my monitor, so I got a new monitor now. This monitor over here is literally about this long. Small arm, so that's it. Brodie, what did you break?
I'm glad you're expanding the battle station over there, Edward. Well, I am working with just a ton of things, and it'll take me 10 minutes to explain all of it. But I'm going to take my time here to just say thank you to one of our moderators and contributors on our Microsoft Security Insights show Discord channel, Noodle McT Woodle, whose name I always seem to jumble. I've been working with this individual on getting a new Discord bot set up where we can actually start building some automation in to get rods, information, tweets, etc. put into our channel, just switching up kind of how we run our Discord community, because we've had just a ton of growth there in the last, especially month or two. And Rod, I think, has been a big part of that, and other people who send links out to the LinkedIn Sentinel or to the LinkedIn show site. Sorry, I'm fighting back a cold. I'm not 100% today. And anyway, Noodle has been fantastic, and we've been working on that together. And so if you haven't had an opportunity to go check out the Discord, people are asking each other questions. We're looking for tons of opportunities to improve it and get you, the people, our listeners and viewers, the information that you need truncated in one great source, so that when you log on each and every day, you've got an excellent repository where you can check, look for updates, find out what's new and shaken, and maybe interact with some cool security professionals. So yeah, big shout out to Noodle. Thank you so much for the help on all fronts with that.
Thank you, Noodle McTwoodle. Yeah, so to our new listeners, watchers, supporters, if you see anyone on the call looking away, we're not being rude. It's Twitch, Discord, StreamYard, and luckily we got someone who can help us handle this, right? We started the show with 2 people. We quickly realized you can't run it with 2 people. You gotta have 4 to get it done. All right. Well, I'm not gonna ask Rod what he's doing, because I know what he's doing. He's enjoying the sun and the warm weather and getting up on stage talking. So without further ado, Mr. Snyder, tell me what's good in the world around Risk IQ, the EASM separation from the TI piece. We sort of got off track last time, so I'm not quite sure which topic we're going to do this time.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was going to talk about. What I've been doing in the past couple of weeks have just been crazy, with people wanting to hear about our threat intelligence and what we're doing in that space. So it's nonstop. As you said, we're kind of have a similar peers in the global black belt organization, Edward, and I'm a little more focused though just on what used to be the Risk IQ product. That's how I started out here in Microsoft, but now that's evolved and become, just like this is now a real high production show. Our threat intelligence products are also very high quality and really coming into their own, being integrated into all the rest of the Microsoft products.
Very cool.
Yeah. Your demonstration on our last show that you were on was outstanding, Eric. I've since seen an internal Microsoft, I believe it was FireCon for those Microsoft employees out there, just an amazing breakdown of the Microsoft threat intelligence component, and a great demo that used real life information. It wasn't just Contoso, right? We were actually looking at some interesting real life things that are happening today in terms of adversaries potentially mimicking, publicly known, major organizations out there, and how our tools can detect them. And Eric, you're coming on again. You're going to be presenting on the internal security community call. I believe that's tomorrow, right? For yet another demonstration of some of these capabilities. So you're just doing the rounds.
Good.
Yeah.
Showing that all that impact and influence out there. Look at it, Eric. All right.
Well, it's cool stuff. It's cool stuff.
Edward, Brodie, you made me a celebrity, so thank you.
Careful what you wish for.
My 15 minutes of fame.
We like to build you up and break you down around here. So, well.
Oh yeah, I'm ready for that too.
I'm just kidding. So, I think we need to give you the ability to share your screen and show your goodness.
Yeah. Let's see. There we go.
Uh-huh.
Screen's up.
And I'm going to maximize it on mine so I can see, because I don't have the quite new monitor put together yet.
Oh, Edward, can you send us some of those monitors, by the way? I'll take a 49-inch monitor for all of these social media channels we need to monitor.
Yeah, you had a couple people ask, Ed, what kind of monitor do you got?
So, LG gaming something, 40 something inches, the real long curve one.
40 something inches or 30 something?
40 something.
Oh, you probably got like a 49. You baller. That is awesome. LG gaming 49-inch widescreen. Nice.
Costco, baby. Costco.
Awesome.
Get anything, right? Oh, I mean, you can go get an 86-inch TV for $2,000 over there. All right. So, all right. So we're starting off with the show presenting the Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence Level 400 Ninja Training. To our watchers, you don't have to be 400 level. This ninja training will get you to 400 level, right? So you don't have to come in as a deadly ninja kung fu security fighter. You just sort of build up there, right? And then you test for your black belt against Eric. And when you don't win, he sends you back and you start over.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things, just like in martial arts, when you you work up to your belt levels. But
testing is always harder than the practice, man. You never know the attitude of your sensei if you're doing traditional grappling, karate, or as I did kung fu, your saifu, right? You know, they don't think they're not looking at your strengths. They're looking at what you're bad at, and they've been watching you between belt progressions, right? So they're going to pick on the things they know that you're bad at, right? But go ahead, sir. Let's not get down the road. Let's have fun. Teach me something.
Sure. Yeah. No, thank you. Again, that's, as you talked about it, we call it a 400 level training, ninja training. These are typically our highest level trainings. When it comes to threat intel, there's a lot to understand the fundamentals, and then you can start getting more into the actual threat hunting, the types of things that Brodie was mentioning, when you actually go out and look for those bad threat actors, try to get more information about them, and then how that's going to impact your organization, yourself, and try to turn that into real intelligence that then you can use to be able to block those threats that we're all seeing and we're all trying to deal with throughout the world as we know it. But yeah, just to give a shout out to my colleague, Alexandra Rowland, who put this together. She did a really great job with this. And I think we're going to throw in a link to this in the chat. Albina was working on doing that. So it's not some long URL that just to do an aka.ms to be able to put that out there and take a look, and you can follow along that way. But just to look through how this goes and what our threat intel product is. So in talking about the evolution of it, we as Risk IQ had a product called Passive Total that was probably one of the most used products in the industry for threat hunters, for security practitioners. And with Passive Total, we had the ability to kind of work together as a team to be able to organize what your investigations looked like. And then we started adding in the threat intelligence feed parts of it. So not only were we looking at what components, things that we saw in our data set, but then also giving you kind of more finished intelligence, things that would give you a better picture of what's going on in the landscape. So that's what has evolved into the Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence. And the great thing about the MDTI for short, that we call it, is that we have been able to give a conduit to the customers and the research community, to threat hunters out there, all of the information that we're gathering within Microsoft. And so a lot of people don't realize that we have a big job to be able to secure our customers and our products. And so we've had a lot of threat intel for quite some time. I've had the opportunity, been fortunate to work with some of those teams even before joining Microsoft. And the Mystic team, our DART team, our MSRC. And then with Risk IQ, we had a group of researchers called Team Atlas that were out there, looking for, combing the internet for different types of threats and being able to polish and enrich what we know about those. So now through MDTI, we're giving you that ability to take advantage of all that we know and get it in an easy to consume fashion, a way to be able to automate that into your programs. And you'll see, talk a little bit about, you mentioned MDE, we talked about Sentinel, where we're pulling those things together so you have a full view of what the threat intel and being able to utilize it throughout the Microsoft product set.
Nice. And by the way, your team names at Risk IQ, Team Atlas, et cetera, pretty awesome team names. In security, we got to have amazing, awesome team names, right? So I'm glad you kept that going.
Absolutely. We couldn't let that go. And there are some really incredible, smart people that are out there doing that research. And they're dedicated to it. That's one of the other things, is making the internet a safer place, making Microsoft customers safer. That's what people get out of bed every day to do and work hard on.
Yeah, which is a great thing about our industry, right? You get dedicated professionals, they're mission driven, they're passionate, and that's why I love being a part of it. And hey, if we can get those people together and come up with amazing solutions like you're showing off here, Eric, I mean, everyone's going to benefit from that, right? So I'm glad that the fruits of the labor are really showing here and breaking that down for us.
So in addition to describing what the product does and what problems it solves, how does the customer know they need it? I mean, just because it's this is not like the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. Is that the right tag? How do they know that they need this, right? Because security sometimes is very reactionary, right? Something happens, then you go buy. You want to go get the flu shot after you had the flu. A little late for that now, right? So how does a customer evaluate and say, yes, this particular tool is something that we need, without having had an incident to initiate the procurement and use of your product?
Yeah, and I think the days of only reacting once you've had a breach or had an incident of some sort are hopefully coming to be in the past, because these days I think every program can benefit from something like MDTI, having the ability to understand what threats are out there, what you need to be looking at, what's targeting your industry, are all important parts of a security program. And obviously with Microsoft, we have a broad range of size companies out there. We have customers that are the largest in the world, and we have some that are the smallest in the world. And so being able to kind of accommodate all of those is an important part. There's a couple of things we did with MDTI in having the ability to have a community edition, and that's it's sort of a freemium model, if you want to think of it that way, that they can start out with that free version to get a lot of the data, a lot of the insights that we're providing, and getting that for free, as well as the ability to go deeper and get the extra threat intel via a paid service that we've got.
Right.
Well, you open a can of worms. Since you open it, I'll have a worm. Okay. You said free. And if the listeners of the show remember, I've had my encounter with free. Luckily, this is much easier than what Frank encountered when he turned on
Defender for IoT.
IoT. I turned on the Threat Intel Risk IQ product, and I ended up getting almost a $2,000 bill. I caught it by virtue of having Eric on the show, and I looked, I was like, oh my God. Luckily, it was against my Visual Studio. One quick little ticket took the bill off, just like that. And I'm like, oh, okay. And they like, yep, this has happened before. Wait a minute, and we'll take care of it. And I didn't actually get charged because luck was that the credit card on file had expired. But in fact, if it wasn't, they took care of it. I like that the back end support and help is there for it. So good stuff. So, but customers need to know, is free trial the 30-day thing that we talked about last time, or is this something different?
Yeah, it's free like a puppy.
Free like beer, free like a puppy. Yeah.
But Eric, we're talking very esoterically here. How would I use this? I am a customer. I just have access to this free version or the paid version. Do I go do something? Does it tell me something? How does this all work?
Yeah, no, great question, Andrea. So the first you would go into a portal that we have, ti.defender.microsoft.com, and you would be able to ask questions of our data set, of our system, being able to look at different items. You also have this library of curated articles, and we bubble up some of as you can see, something 2 hours ago that we put up to the top on particular threat actors, particular threats that are coming out across the global landscape, being able to see that. And so you can start from one of two ways. One, you can search for something. You can go in and ask questions of the system, basically throw an IP address, a certificate, a component, maybe a whois email address into that. and being able to kind of see everything across our large data set. The other option is to go dig into one of these articles and follow along from where that goes and see kind of pivot and follow the breadcrumbs from there. Now,
so I would be looking in my SIM or my XDR tool, and I would see an IP address or a URL or something, and then I could come here to get more information. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Or maybe alternatively, just building on what Andrew is saying, if I'm in financial services or manufacturing, I see some tags there. So can I just come in maybe without necessary intel or signals like IP addresses, et cetera? Can I just find out, hey, what's affecting the FinServ industry today? What threat actors are affecting that industry? Is that another avenue that you see customers pursuing?
Yeah, Brodie, so we've got some of that tagging based on specific industry. We're also looking at the ability to try to give financial services, healthcare, manufacturing verticals to be able to do that. That's something that's kind of a follow-on, not in there as of today, but something that's coming very quickly.
Nice.
Yeah, and Andrew, just to add to what you were saying, what this is all based on is a bunch of observations and intelligence that we brought together. So I talked about the teams that we're doing with research and adding all the enrichment and polishing of this finished threat intel. We also have all the raw data because we're from thousands of points across the global internet. We're out interrogating, listening to, and crawling the broader internet and bringing all that data that we find back together into the data set, and then putting those pieces together to give you a really good picture of what's going on. You can see the attacker infrastructure that's out there. You can see what types of changes go on and see what new threats are popping up. So for example, command and control servers that are out there, getting an ability to view that and see what's going on.
So let me ask this. Ed is always the champion of the small guy, the underserved, the underappreciated, right? How does a small to medium-sized business or a small to medium corporate, because there are two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking straight enterprise here, big internet footprint, presence, awareness. Does this scale down to someone that, I give you an example. Some of the smaller companies you're ever going to see are around ITAR. And if you're familiar with agency and everything, that is around munitions, buying weapons. They're not huge companies. And then you have some very niche companies that are small that do very important things. Is this a consumable product for them also? You know, let me just ask it plain out. Is it affordable for these small and medium-sized businesses?
Yeah, and again, it depends on what their mission is. So for in comparison to what's in the industry, I think it's affordable. The is somewhere between free and the premium product where they fit. You know, it may be that they can get by with just the community capabilities, but most cases they're going to probably want those premium data sets, the derived information, the thing to understand what types of advanced threat actors are out there. And so those would be a premium. But again, if they've got that need, if they're in a regulated industry, if they're in something that is a high security situation, then they would be able to take advantage. And we tried to price this or make it consumable because it's by seat. So they can go in if they've got the M365 admin center, they can go in there and add this product in and just add it to a seat that they based on an email address and put that in there. If again, if it's a larger organization and they want to look at a bigger number of seats, and I kind of have some target user functions here. So if you think about a security operations center, and you want every SOC analyst to have the ability to go and view this threat intel, which is a lot of the cases that we have, then you would want to have each of them with a seat. So you could add that. That's probably something you would work with your commercial seller for Microsoft to be able to get that kind of included in your agreements.
this is one of the products that I thought would struggle because of lack of industry awareness. I underestimated Risk IQ's presence after meeting you up in Redmond. You guys have a history, right?
Yeah.
The product name has changed a little bit, but I've seen more customers ask for it rather than sellers selling it. So it must have some validity and some use, because people are saying, hey, we need this. I was actually on a call to say, how do we report, protect our internet presence from type of impersonation? And the biggest industry I thought about with my limited knowledge of the product was retail, because I've been getting a lot of stuff from, bestbuy.com, but when you look at the URL in the email, it's a little bit different, right? And then if you go to the website, it looks just like it, except for they add a B or the U as some little obscure character. I'm like, that's pretty good. So, oh man, do you see upticks, or do you have a specific industry that consumes your product more than others? Is retail a good example? Because I cover retail, because I'm seeing it.
Yeah, retail is a great example. I most heavily align with manufacturing, and manufacturers of all sizes are really needing this product. You ask who needs it, who wants it. It's pretty much becoming everybody has a need for the threat intelligence, and the traditional ways of getting that through some sort of obscure feed is not as easily consumed as what we can give them with this MDTI product and put it into the Defender family.
So Eric, we've got a question on the chat over here. Can you find dev actors in Defender for TI?
Dev actors?
I think the heart of the question, thanks, Andrew. I think the heart of the question is, if we want to go play with this, can we find test or test actors, or some, when he steps through the trial, can you actually look them up, or am I misunderstanding that? Maybe?
I think you misunderstand it. I think dev is a designation of certain APTs. Is that where you're going, Andrea?
Yes. So he's talking about, and if you go back to that main page, I think you can see now we call them different things, right? Some people call something Fancy Bear, but we call it Copernicum, right? So can you talk about that maybe a little bit, Eric?
Thank you.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that, and there's also some things that are currently in private preview around being in. There's actually I'm going to click back to we have a cloud security private community external site, and we also have a Defender TI channel that you can join. We also are accepting people into the private preview to look at things to go into more depth on the threat actors that we're tracking. And I think that's probably what that was at McNoodle.
Yeah, he's talking about APTs, right? So just like we were talking about, like Microsoft uses, when we talk about those kind of actors, we use the periodic chart. I don't know why we decided to do that, right? But if you see something barium, if you see something like we see here bismuth, or if you see something Copernicum, those are our names for those APTs versus like we said, like Fancy Bear, or what you might hear other people use. So
yeah, exactly. Thanks for pointing that out, Andrea. Different organizations have chosen on how to designate those, but we all know there's kind of a decoder ring to match those up in the end. We're all looking at the same types of threat actors, and I just like to call them advanced threat actors, because it's not necessarily state sponsored. Some are, some are not, and we see those advanced threat actors. So you point out, we have been tracking all of them for our own purposes internally, and this is where we'll be able to give that to our customers to be able to take a look at that. And that's one of those things that's part of the premium. So as a community user, you wouldn't have access to that. It would be a reason that you'd want to go up to the premium version.
Yep. I had a question. I was trying to. I'm looking at what you're presenting. I'm also trying to play in my environment at the same time. And I sort of. Well, I got the question now. How does this fit into Sentinel? Because I'm looking at some analytics that sort of look at IOCs and TPs. it can't be the same manner that you do it. Does this integrate with Sentinel in that manner that it takes advantage of the analytic rules that are looking for these APTs or these VENs, persistent threat actors?
Yeah, and that is again, those are something that's a slight future follow on, but over the next few months, and we talked about the trial. So we have for the premium product, or for the enterprise version, we have a 30-day free trial, being able to take a look at that and being able to see that. And there's also some capabilities if you're in those private previews to even extend some of that. So I would recommend someone that's really serious about it to try to look at trialing it now and getting into there. Of course, Edward, I have a structure in this training, and you want to skip all the way straight down to the Sentinel in module 4. But yes, there are Defender TI detections now in Microsoft Sentinel. There's some things that you can look at, some things that are being built out already into those threat analytics, and we have an analytics rule template in there around Sentinel. So you can go in and actually get analysis in Sentinel now with this threat intelligence, and we're adding more of that every day. You'll see quite a bit more in just the coming months.
I mean, if you want a stretch project, you want something to work on with me, maybe you and I work together to build a push button solution. We can get it published into the Content Hub, right? Showing impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's there was a couple of hooks that I just got confirmation are there now. So this will be some great things for us to work on when we have a little bit of slower time over the holidays, right?
There's already something in the Content Hub. I'm talking a little bit additional for those who went and checked to see if it was there, because there's something there called Risk IQ Illuminate, which is in there. But I'm thinking of something a little bit more hand holding that puts out the analytic rules, maybe some advanced hunting queries that reside over there. So maybe a side project. We'll look at it.
Yeah, and we're leapfrogging what we did with the Risk IQ Illuminate by far with this threat intel.
Yep. Because the Risk IQ Illuminate inside the Content Hub has 27 playbooks. And for those who are not familiar, playbooks are one of the components of our SOAR capability within Sentinel, right? And if you're in Azure, it's just, I'm having a brain fart. What are the playbooks in Azure? Logic apps. There you go. I could not remember that. I had an old moment. There you go. All right. So, as customers consume this, how do they improve it? Or is the improvement and the detections really done on the back end, and the customer has to go make configurations to see the benefits of the platform or solution improvement?
Yeah, well, I talked about what we're bringing in from our detections and information. We also are pulling everything from the open source community. So we've got that open source intelligence that we're bringing in, and we also publish out to the open source as Microsoft. The thing that if there's researchers, if there's security contributors that are putting out into the open source community, we're going to pull that, and then we're going to expand on it. So you're going to, if you found something, we're going to take that and give you even more information around it.
Okay. Sounds really, really good. What's the lift from seeing? I think it's pretty light, because when I put it in my test environment, it was light, but I got a lot of information. I wish I had maintained it before I just knee-jerk reacted and deleted everything. What's the lift? Is it getting easier to put stuff in there, or is it? Do you have a choice? Can I keep it vanilla? Or will it, if I install it, will it just put a lot of default stuff in there? When I say default stuff, this is my lack of knowledge of the product, but there were some sections of URLs, source and reference, IP addresses. MITRE had a bunch of stuff in there, and I'm like, I didn't do that. How did that happen?
Yeah, and I think some of what you're referring to is where we split up the products, where Illuminate kind of had a mix of things that we're looking at your specific stuff, as well as looking at the threat intelligence and the threat actors that we're observing out beyond and into the broader internet.
Mm-hmm.
Just to kind of set that up, we have that big data set that we go and we capture everything. On the threat intel side, we're looking out at the attackers. What do they look like? What does their infrastructure look like? What are the things that we're seeing out and pointing that telescope out that way? With EASM, or the external attack surface management, we're using that same data set, but we're turning that lens back on your organization, on you as a company, and saying these are what we see related to you. And this is kind of overlaying our threat intelligence, our vulnerability assessments, and saying this is what is related to you. So that that piece has been, we've made a lot of improvements to make that as user-friendly and as self-service, self-driven as possible, Edward, and that's only getting better. Also, the recent announcements around Microsoft Defender for Cloud working with ESM is huge. We've also got some really great connectors going with the other products to be able to merge those together, to be able to search across a lot of it. So again, Sentinel is going to be that central point to be able to do KQL queries across all of these different pieces and data that we have. And I think with the playbooks there in Sentinel and what we've pulled together and made it easy with ESM is going to be great.
Okay. You said something, and once again, I'm looking. In regards to your product, now your product, unless you own a product.
It's our product, Edward.
It's our product. There you go. Your product, my product, my product. You know, when I am using this, how does someone who is not a primary Azure consumer, Microsoft Sentinel user, can someone who use other security tools still take advantage of this? You know, it sounds like I have to have an Azure subscription to at least deploy this stuff, but can I use it against, you know, say, hey, I have other fees that I like to take into consideration and do this? How does it play well with other products?
Yeah, and it still plays well with others. That was one of the things that we were known for with Risk IQ, is working with a lot of other products and being able to take advantage of it with different types of security programs and practices. Just to back up a little bit on how I mentioned the MDTI, what we're looking at here and what we showed the 400 level Ninja training for, that is a per seat scenario through the M365 infrastructure, M365 admin center. So if you don't use M365, which there's probably not very many people that would listen to this that don't, but if you don't, you can always set up a M365 subscription trial and so forth to get that capability to turn it up and use it. If you already have that, you can just go in and do a couple of clicks and turn that on or trial it. For ESM, that is actually an Azure resource, something that you spin up in the Azure portal. It's really easy to do. It's a few clicks, takes just a couple of minutes to get going. And then you just give it some information about pointing it at your organization, maybe something as simple as a top level domain or an IP block that you want the system to go out and identify and attribute to yours, and then give you an idea of what your attack surface looks like.
Okay. Yeah, you answered one of the other questions I had in that, so cool for that. I will confess I haven't had a lot of time to sort of dive deep into it. I've not completed the Ninja training. From what I've seen on LinkedIn, people love it, right? They're going through and get their little badge of honor and put the belt on too tight. What else is a hidden? Give us a little nugget for those that would say, hey, if you're still not convinced, at least give this a trial. This is something cool that you shouldn't miss. Do you have like a little hidden Easter egg in there somewhere?
Yeah, again, we're sensitive on what we show, just to make sure that we're not offending anyone, even if it may be someone that's not necessarily the best of actors out there. But you mentioned it, that there's the capabilities to integrate this with other products. Both ours first party, we're doing that in the we're doing that as the sort of the highest priority. So integrating with Defender for Endpoint and into Sentinel, on the ESM side, doing that into Defender for Cloud and into Sentinel. But we also have other, there's if people haven't gone all the way in with Sentinel yet, or they're in a transition, or maybe they just they're not interested in Sentinel, which I mean, I think both of us would urge them to still look at, because I think there's a lot of reasons why it makes sense. But if they haven't bought in, then they can look to integrate this together via other mechanisms like an API automation.
I have one more question. So I'm reading from some stuff I saw to prepare it. Look at me being a big boy, right? How does this fit for those who provide security partnership, MSSPs? Is this something that can be monetized from an MSSP perspective? And is it something that can be delegated via Azure Lighthouse if you can? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's not really a well, Lighthouse would probably come into play depending on how they have that set up in structuring it. We have a lot of MSSPs that are utilizing the product and that are very interested in doing it. There's a couple of different ways. You know, there's the capability of them using a seat as their own, and there's some other mechanisms that I'm not totally, because again, I'm not on, I don't necessarily deal with the commercials of it, but there's the capability of I guess allocating seats of someone's organization to an MSSP for them. So the company would, I guess, purchase the seats, and then the MSSP would utilize it on their behalf, kind of like they would use another type of M365 seat on behalf of the organization. So there's two different ways we see people that are using it.
And that sort of makes sense now that you explain it that way, that there's nothing to delegate by virtue of the way the product is procured and deployed. But if I have someone who has, eyes over my shoulder, then you buy one more seat for them and then set up whatever alerting that you want to go to that particular seat that then forwards to an email or whatever else, whatever alerting you have.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Just buy a vendor seat so they have access to be able to do something, right?
Yeah, and we don't designate them as a vendor seat, but if just as I mentioned, if it was an M365 seat, some sort, be the same scenario. Okay. But MSSPs love this. I mean, this is something that's great for them to be able to protect their customers as well.
Yeah, and they can probably brand it, right? Because to the customer, I don't care how you do it, it's just done. And they probably don't even spell out that it's your product. They'll just say, when you buy our services, you get threat intel, right? And they resell it and say, hey, put this in your environment, give us one of those seats, and we got you. We'll take care of it. All right.
And again, now you're getting into the fine print of the agreements. So,
fine print.
Sell it as an offering because it's ours. Okay,
but I would,
whenever I have fine print, I'm either the victim or I did something bad, right? You didn't read the fine print. So,
but we'd welcome those conversations to make sure that it fit best into how they're offering those MSSPs. I mean, that's an important part of the industry, that especially when you talk about smaller organizations that can't afford or don't have the resources to build out their own full program to protect themselves. MSSP is a great way for them to get that.
And well, I won't go into that. You're saying that's not really in your scope. I was talking about what would be some of your top MSSPs that have consumed it. But beyond scope of this, there's a whole partner group that does that. And I think I met one or two of your peers who talked about that in Redmond. So yeah. I'm interested in the product, but I'm scared to commit to it because I got too many things on my plate. But it looks really cool to be able to do it, and it's only cool to me because I come from a networking background. This is really close to networking. Looking at external, this is really close to looking at these things, right? So it sort of takes me back. But good stuff. This is all right.
Eric, well, so yeah, I'd also love to go through the Ninja training soon, but I'd love the question that Andrea brought up earlier. Where do you start? How do you really utilize it? Do I start plugging in signals that I'm getting from my detection mechanisms, SIM, SOARs, etc.? So if you're someone like Andrea or any individual out there and they want to take what they have and plug it into the system, does the Ninja training like teach you how you can leverage that threat intel and help better protect your organization through the use of the tool? And does it step you through that and how you can add that value to your security operations center?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you go through each of these modules one by one, step by step, again, I'm probably have a little bit different perspective on it because I've been working with it for quite some time, but I think it gives a pretty good view of how to do that and go through each of those steps to get started. And just to kind of give you a little bit of a tangible example here, if we look at in the threat intel tool, and I pull up one of these finished articles, looks like it's double checking my, you can see we have a number of different public indicators. So where I talked about the open source information, these are public indicators that we've seen and being able to identify. And then we've taken this and gone a step further. So you see there's 6 indicators here. There's 121 of the Defender TI indicators. So we can get that information. We can go and actually take this and apply it somewhere. We can download those indicators, and we could drop it in just as a rudimentary example. And for Edward's purposes, we could drop that into the block list on our firewall, so that we don't ever talk out to those types of IP addresses to protect ourselves. And obviously we have a lot of other mechanisms that don't need to take into that brute force of ability, but just an example of where you can take this.
Cool. Cool. Can you? Sorry, Edward. Just a follow up. So you can download the threat indicators, leverage them with other security appliances within your organization. Is there an API you can hook up, or ability to automate that process? Is that coming? Is that available now?
Brodie, you're killing me here. Yeah.
Sorry, man. I'm really curious. It's cool.
So we have what's called a private preview in Microsoft prior to going to a public preview. Currently, there are private preview opportunities. If you have an interest in an API for threat intelligence, please reach out. They're on those links that are in the Ninja training to go and join our community and get the opportunity to utilize these early on prior to them going to public preview. But when they go to public preview, and I'll just say in the near future, not to give a date of any sort, but in the near future, then you'd be able to utilize that API to ask these same questions to get much of this information out.
Okay. Thank you for providing that insight. I wasn't trying to handcuff you with the answer. I was honestly curious. So
no problem.
Everybody out there reaches out and joins our private preview programs. They're amazing. Yeah. And Andrew, you've been quiet. You got any other questions?
No, I was going to say, Noodle had another great question for us. Customers keep asking about dark web monitoring. Is that anything that either MDTI does, or do we have anything that does that?
So MDTI, we've stayed away from the dark web monitoring. Specifically, you will find that there are indicators that kind of go dip their toes into that darker web, but it's not something that we have a specific feed into that. There's some debate on what that dark web even means in certain areas. So you're going to get a lot of good intelligence, but it's not what we traditionally think of on that. That would be separate at the moment. We have partnerships around that with Microsoft in the dark web area, but I think there's not an offering yet that we can talk about on it.
Okay, so being considered. Noodle, thanks for the question. We're looking into it. Yeah,
it's a good question, Noodle, and something that does come up quite often. We did have some limited dark web capabilities that would give a certain number up to try to kind of give you those top threats or top talkers, but it wasn't comprehensive in the Illuminate product. And so this is, we've tried to stay out of that and make sure that we're staying above it, give the value on the main threat actors that are out there versus going behind those paywalls and some of the interesting things that happen on the dark web.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you. So Andrea, Edward touted you as the new show Defender for Endpoint expert. I love that solution. I work on it all the time. So if you're talking to, in your opinion, you're talking to a customer, they've got Defender for Endpoint in their environment. How could you increase their value from that solution by talking about Defender TI here? What sorts of things do you think that your standard Defender for Endpoint customer out there could take advantage of using this new intelligence when they think about designing controls for different endpoints across the organization?
Well, I will definitely say, I mean, to me, some of this looks very much like the existing threat analytics inside of Defender for Endpoint. And I wonder how much overlap there is with that, which, those guidance on what are the latest attacks, how are they working? So some of that seems very similar to me, but certainly, like we said, ingesting those threat indicators into either Sentinel or Defender for Endpoint will allow us to grow our ability to take automated remediation, right? If you see these IPs, do this thing, right? Block that in the firewall, isolate the device, whatever it is we might decide to do. So I can definitely see the added value of bringing those two tools together. We'll see, since, again, it's additional cost. So hopefully we'll see some great benefits from that. Eric, do y'all have any good customer stories that you can share, or do you have a link to the customer stories site so we can see how, customers are really using this, the benefit they're seeing?
Yeah, I think some of those are being published right now. Keep in mind that we just launched this product about 3.5 months ago. And so this is still, some of those are being kind of put together and published out. But I think we're going to have some great customer wins here over the next, probably around the holidays. Another thing just to extend on the MDE is, you're right that there's a lot of threat intelligence, threat analytics that are in there. I don't want to give people the impression that we didn't have threat intelligence prior to launching this product. This is kind of an extension of what you had. So imagine you're in MDE, you get some information that's related to it, and you click a button to go out to MDTI or ti.defender.microsoft.com to get more detail on it, to go deeper on it, to get some additional finished intelligence, and to maybe do a deeper investigation with the raw data that we've got.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, that threat analytics piece is a key component I love talking with customers about for MDE. And it's nice to know this is kind of an extension of that, allowing you to dig deeper, to your point, Eric, before I lose my voice. I'm really looking forward to working on that myself.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to you losing your voice too. Oh, never mind. That's not what you're saying.
That's a pretty good burn. That's a pretty good burn for you. I'm impressed.
I'm gonna tell you, the behavior doesn't change because we got a new host, right?
Right. Yeah. Manners, but still giving each other the business. I got you.
We're hoping for a softer, gentler Edward, but.
Oh, as much as Brodie gets on me, man, if you can't kick a man when he's down, when can you kick him? There you go.
You could outrun me, Edward. You could outrun me, bud.
I don't know about that now. Hey, but this has actually been the most excellent. Andrea's the wordsmith. I can't think the end of this trilogy, because you've been on the show 3 times. This is your 3rd time, Eric, or is it your 4th?
Yeah. Well, it was a little over a year ago that I was on for the first time, and then
twice this year.
Yeah, twice this year. So this is wonderful.
I think introducing who you were with the risk IQ at the very onset of the acquisition, and the 2 in depth about the products. And I think we still haven't talked about the EASM piece, right? We only talked about the TI piece, right? Is that something up under your whim, or is that another? Did you guys really separate it just like that? You do the TI piece and someone else does the EASM piece.
No, I can talk about both of those pieces. we just didn't get enough time to focus on this one on the last podcast. We talked a lot more about EASM, which was great.
Okay.
Love talking about that too. That's where I wanted to make sure we got the listeners and viewers some idea on the MDTI.
Well, I think
Is there ninja
because
training coming for EASM? Sorry, Edward, I got to ask.
you asked the question. There you go.
Yeah, and I think the one is going to be coming very shortly because we have that kind of interest in EASM as well.
Awesome. We're looking forward to that. I'm sure everyone listening and watching is looking forward to that as well. That's cool. Yeah.
Well, it seems like based on the newness of the acquisition and constant product improvement, that this is not your last stop, your last show. So anytime there's improvements and stuff that you want to come on, definitely come on and talk about it some more, especially, with integrations around MDE. Andrew's going to love that. I'm on the Sentinel piece. And I can't really find a play for MDI because if someone's beaconing or doing something from your internal network on your domain controllers, you got bigger problems. You got much worse problems than that, right? I've been trying to look at the Discord stuff a little bit. It looks like we haven't have any questions.
Basically, Noodle he takes up half the chat because he's a chatty character. Eric, we want to have you back on again. I think you're our most popular returning guest or our most frequented returning guest at this stage, Edward. I believe that's correct, right? 4 times now. So yeah. And pardon me, Eric, I didn't realize your internal discussion on EASM was actually today at Microsoft. And internal Microsoft folks, if you hadn't had an opportunity to join the global security community, please do so and take a look at Eric's presentation today and some of the past stuff that he's done, because we're able to get into more depth for everybody who works at Microsoft in terms of demonstrations and whatnot. And folks are public, folks out there who are listening to this, like, definitely give a look at this. Take a look at this training, try it out, put on an expired credit card on your environment, maybe if you're going to pull something like Edward did. But we, I love our ninja trainings. I love how open we are with our documentation on MS Learn. That's how I upscaled my career. And if you're interested in this and you want to get deeper into it, have fun. The link's in the chat, and we'd love to hear your feedback on not only this training but other trainings that we offer.
For sure.
I feel like Eric is an Instagram influencer with that background. I'm waiting for him to put on like a cool hat and start posing.
Yeah,
that's my greenery screen.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for taking time out your busy schedule. We're going to be nice and play nice, but we always have to end with something about Microsoft Learn. If we don't, Rod Trent will be mad at us. The ninja trainings and the learning path for the Risk IQ acquisition of the two products, EASM, as well as Defender for Threat Intel, is on Learn. So go take a read through it. It is a very good. It's a very good read. I picked out sections because that's where I focus on in my career. But yes, it is out there for Learn. With that, will there be a certification associated with your product?
We've asked this before. This is a good question.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that we do, because I think this is an important part of the industry, an important part of our security growth in Microsoft. So I would definitely advocate for and even help try to build that certification program. There is a little bit of a in that 400 ninja training. There is kind of what we call a knowledge check, so similar to some of the others in Learn, but it doesn't necessarily translate to a certification yet. But I would hope that we end up seeing an SC number of something with Threat Intel.
Yeah, and not to take the credit, this is something that Frank and I had talked about. He's working JTAs and he's working the new updates to SC200. And he asked me, do you think this is something that should be included in SC200? I was like, absolutely not. That exam is getting so large and so broad now, right? And I'm like, you can't assume that everybody's running every product that we sell. And so it's not a very fair measure of skill. Even if it's only one question, that one question can tip someone from passing and not passing, right? And they don't have exposure to it. But I think a independent certification of the product very singularly You know,
Yeah.
we'll make it the SC. Let me see what numbers I got left.
Yeah, I don't know what the mapping is.
I got a list of wishes that every time we should talk about certifications. SC, we'll call it SC 186.
Oh man.
All right. Specific.
Yeah. Thanks, Edward. Eric, thanks so much for coming on the show and showing this off again. We love it. We're going to have you back definitely. This is extremely enlightening. And you know, if you're listening or watching, we provided a ton of links over the course of our chats in terms of how you can get at some of these MS Learn resources, and we'll be sure to include them in the show notes as well. So thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
Woohoo!
Have a great day, everybody.
Everybody gets the free car.